You're listening to Nostalgia Club, the podcast where we look back on our favorite childhood stories and revisit them as adults. At least one of us hasn't read or watched these series, so we also get a first-timer's opinion. Spoiler alert, we will be discussing storylines and future events beyond the first books and episodes. So, proceed with caution.
Welcome to Nostalgia Club, everyone. My name is Michael. I have with me two other individuals. Say your names, both of you, now at the same time. 1, 2, 3, go.
I'm Jino.
And I'm Victoria.
And we are all podcast editors and sound designers who are now becoming the thing we swore to destroy.
I didn't swear to destroy us.
Victoria, wipe his memory quickly.
I never signed anything.
So here we are today talking about Arthur, the name of the cartoon show that started in the 90s and ended very recently as of 2022. Crazy stuff. Victoria and I have prior experience with Arthur. Jino did not until now, or if he did, it was, I guess, a passing sort of familiarity.
I am aware that the franchise exists. I have read the original book that Arthur is based off of, but I don't remember anything about it except that Arthur looks very different in the book. He looks like an actual aardvark.
That's true. It's called Arthur's Nose.
It is?
Yeah.
It's called Arthur's Nose.
Yeah.
Oh.
And he looks like an honest-to-goodness aardvark. And the whole plot of that book involves Arthur feeling self-conscious about his nose. People are like, it gets in the way. It's this big old aardvark, trunk kind of sniffer. And he goes to the rhinologist, I think that's how you pronounce it, to get a new nose. But ultimately decides to keep his nose.
Wow.
Yeah, which is interesting because the first episode of Arthur the cartoon show, as well as I believe the second Arthur book that got made later on, I'm not sure if it was...
I'm pretty sure they remade Arthur's Eyes, possibly after the show came out. I'm not sure.
I
feel
think
like
you're
I read
right.
it. Yeah.
Yes. The original picture book came out in 1976, and the TV show with a redesigned Arthur, as well as other characters, I think, came out in 96? 90?
The show came out in 1996.
1996.
Arthur's Eyes, the book. There is one from 1979 where Arthur does have a longer snout. Not quite an aardvark like in the original Arthur's Nose, which I remember to be a very old style of art. I remember the coloring style was kind of dark.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Yeah. Then they redesigned it and now his face is more like an oval.
Yeah. I read the original. I remember the art style distinctly. I did not remember the plot. This was a long time ago when I was a little baby.
Wow, look at that. And of course, the first episode of the Arthur cartoon show is no longer matched with the first book. I say no longer as if it ever used to be. But I imagine when they were throwing out ideas, all right, what's the first episode? They saw Arthur's nose, and they're like, well, he doesn't have an aardvark nose anymore.
Yeah.
So we'll start with book 2, Arthur's Eyes.
Yeah.
Not really an aardvark at all. It's more like a bear now.
Yeah, I suppose. More like a bear or some strange monkey, simian creature.
I think he is still intended to be
He's intended to be an
aardvark, though, which is interesting.
Yes, especially considering the very last episode of Arthur, which we'll eventually talk about.
Yeah. So just for context, the episodes that we watched in preparation for the show, which we will mostly be focusing the discussion around, is we watched episode 1, which is Arthur's Eyes, and then we also watched episode 2, which is
The Real Mr. Ratburn.
The Real Mr. Ratburn. But then the actual episode possibly has 2 titles because the actual clip we watched was called Arthur's Teacher Trouble or something.
Was it?
I don't know if you noticed.
Oh, I'm inclined to believe The Real Mr. Ratburn is the title they went with, or at least the one in the master document that someone has somewhere of Arthur episodes in their titles.
We'll have to ask PBS directly.
We also watched Mr. Ratburn and the Special Someone.
Yes.
Which, instead of episode 3 or 4 or 10, is episode, 240?
240, yeah. And then we
Very
also
recent.
watched the very last episode,
Yes.
which is All Grown Up.
And what number is that?
253.
253.
Yeah, so Arthur has 25 seasons. Some of them are not quite full seasons, but it has gone on for a really long time.
It went, I believe, every single year except for 2020. So that's 96 to 2002.
That's a hardworking production team.
2022. Sorry. That is a very hardworking production team.
It's all hand animated too, isn't it?
You can see, of course, in the new episodes, the way that they have animated has changed, I believe. The tools have gotten more sophisticated. Not that I understand a shred of what that involves, because we all literally do almost the polar opposite of that
We
for
do.
a living.
Yeah.
We do. That's still a very impressive amount of custom animated episodes that are being
Yeah.
pumped out by PBS.
Also, like, props to the writers who are still coming up with, like, great children's content.
It's like topical, meant for kids,
Yeah.
exploration of life and growing up children's content.
Yeah.
The genre, as it's described on good old Wikipedia, is comedy, drama, slice of life, problem solving, edutainment, which is, I guess, most children's shows, but Arthur has a special sort of vibe to it.
Yeah.
It's hard to put. Like, if I think of a different similar children's show like Franklin, I don't know if...
I love Franklin.
Did you ever watch Franklin, Jino?
I have vague memories of it.
Put it on the list, Victoria. That's another thing that
I don't think I've watched Franklin, but I read the books and I was obsessed with it because at my library in elementary school, they had like puppets that you could check out in conjunction with the books. And you're talking about Franklin the turtle, right?
The turtle.
Yeah. So I really like the turtle like puppet. So I really like Franklin.
I don't know what it is, but like the inclusion of slice of life on the genre sort of list is very interesting to me because I don't think you necessarily classify a lot of children's shows with, cast of characters, mostly episodic adventures as slice of life. It's primarily edutainment, primarily problem solving. For example, that's something that I think of when I think of Franklin. Every episode typically seems to involve, at least from my memory, Franklin, or less frequently, one of Franklin's friends does something wrong.
Yeah.
And they got to figure out how to fix their mistake. A lot of Arthur episodes, like I was honestly just reading the episode descriptions last night. And one episode is literally just about Arthur's younger sister, DW, a real spunky stinker of a little sister, going through some kind of time where she is very upset and she's throwing tantrums and no one can really get to the bottom of it. And the crux of the episode involves Arthur getting his friend, who's the one that's very brusque and straightforward and honest and has like the bob haircut?
That's Francine.
Francine. Getting Francine to try and talk to DW and just reading the synopsis, it's like it doesn't necessarily work the first time. There's a conversation between them that goes a little south when DW feels like she's being sort of taken pity on or talked down to, which is an interesting turn of like interpersonal drama for a children's show. And it eventually resolves itself when they find out that DW is upset that she's not invited to a friend's birthday party. Not because she's actually close with that person, but because that person is close with her best friend.
Aww.
Which is actually pretty involved when it comes to understanding, the relationships between kids and, the little spurts of jealousy that might develop in those early relationships. And honestly, can stay with many different people throughout adolescence, even young adulthood, feeling like you're maybe losing a friend to someone else that you're not that close to. And the sort of climax of the episode is just a conversation between Arthur's friend, a side character, and his little sister about recognizing the sort of, gosh, this is how you know the show is good, because I can remember how it made me feel, even if I can't remember the actual specific description of it. But it just sort of resolves itself in a conversation about, I guess, the limits of certain relationships, but also the understanding of, being confident and comfortable within yourself. And then Francine invites DW to her birthday party.
Yeah.
Which is very sweet. And it's like, that's just one episode.
And it's just 10 minutes. Like, these episodes, they do a lot in 10 minutes, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because each episode of Arthur is
like 12.
12. Yeah, like 10 to 12 minutes. But then there's like 2 episodes in like one
30-minute block.
One 30-minute block of Arthur. I think when I rewatched it, it reminded me so much of how like that was just what your imagination was like as a kid.
Yeah, because they're filled with daydreams.
Yeah.
Whenever the kids are discussing some strange turn of events or worrying about something in the future, it manifests itself in the form of a surreal, mini narrative of imaginative wonder with strange, sometimes cutely horrifying fixations. The second episode in particular, when the kids are going into third grade and they're seeing what teacher they're going to get. And there's 3 teachers for third grade, and one of them's like, this is the nice teacher, and everyone gets cookies. This is the fun teacher, and everyone's like dancing in the classroom. And then there's Mr. Ratburn. And, you know, you see the pans over to the side of the window of the classroom wall, and like the sheet over the window, the canvas comes down, and you see this horrible silhouette of like a rat with drooling teeth. They're talking about how horrible Mr. Ratburn is. They talk to like a quote-unquote upperclassman who's leaving Mr. Ratburn's class and is putting them through their paces of, Mr. Ratburn's the worst person you've ever met.
Yeah.
He does X and Y and Z. He's a vampire. And he enthralls the students. And you get pictures of Mr. Ratburn as a vampire with fangs, holding kids in his dungeon. It's all just enjoyable. They don't
The part
hold back.
that got me the most is like when Arthur thinks that he'll be locked in a dungeon and like be forced to do like 3,000 math problems. I remember that scene so distinctly, which is why like initially I was like, oh, maybe we'll watch like the first episode and then like jump forward a couple episodes. But then as soon as I saw episode 2, I was like, no, we have to watch this one. Also, it is like setting up like one of the most important relationships in the series, which is Mr. Ratburn being a great teacher to his students, which ties in well to episode 240, Mr. Ratburn and the Special Someone. Now the kids like love Mr. Ratburn. They're like, we just want him to be happy. But there's also still a little bit of like
self-interest.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing about that one is the kids think that Mr. Ratburn is going to get married to this really imperious woman. And they make the assumption that's true because she's also like a rat, and they're getting dinner at the same cafe the kids are at. And he's like, well,
and they're talking about the wedding.
Yeah, they're talking about the wedding.
Yeah.
And she's like, we got to toughen you up, Ratburn. You can't settle for anything less than perfect. And the kids are like, oh my gosh.
They're like, oh no, Mr. Ratburn is going to become even worse. They're like, Mr. Ratburn's tough already. How can he become tougher?
So they like care about Mr. Ratburn, but at the same time, it's very much like we cannot let Mr. Ratburn marry this person just for our own health and safety.
Yeah. So I just think it's so funny. Just like the childhood innocence of being like, yeah, I want my teacher to be happy, but also like, I really just don't want more homework.
I think one of the things I loved about episode 2, The Real Mr. Ratburn, is that when Arthur and his best friend Buster, a very messy,
loves food,
video games, pop culture, but very lovable bunny, when they go to investigate what Mr. Ratburn does outside of school, expecting him to be a legitimate monster.
Yeah, up to no good. And then he's just like buying groceries or whatever.
He does like a puppet show or something.
Yeah.
There's this really, honestly, kind of sort of stretches the boundaries of disbelief where every time he does his puppet show, like, the puppet's head falls off, and so they overhear Mr. Ratburn earlier ordering, like, I need more boy heads. And Arthur and Buster are like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's like, I have enough girl heads, but I need more boy heads. And Arthur and Buster are like, no. And then, like, at one point, like, Mr. Ratburn, like, when they're stalking him, they see him, like, at the store at like a wood shop, and he buys like a saw, and then they like clutch their necks because they're like, no, our heads. And then they like bump into Francine on their way, and they're like, don't worry, Francine, he doesn't want girl heads, but he's after boy heads.
There's a bunch of fun little visual gags. Like when they say that, they jump behind her and like prop their heads on her shoulder as if to like we're girl heads.
It's so good. I just like love it because it's like when you're a kid, you're super worried about that stuff. But at the same time, watching it, like, because I like forgot about the puppet thing. And I was like, what's it going to be like?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be like a school project where like he's like prepping for like a craft. I don't know. They're going to like build little like dolls in school for an assignment or something. So I thought it was going to be like that. And then it's like, oh, he's actually just like doing something fun for the class. But then it turns out he's like putting on a puppet show, which is like his hobby.
I guess.
So it even got me a little bit. I was like, what's the true intention of this like girl head, boy head thing?
It's just a weird phrase to say. Like,
Yeah,
I
and
need
also-
more boy heads.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know about that one.
I guess it was like
It's
made
episode
to,
2.
it was made to be intentionally misleading.
Yeah.
But it's just really funny.
I do love the sort of how they sort of consolidated at the end, and the synthesis of like the real Mr. Ratburn is that he talks to Arthur and Buster, and he's like, I hear a lot of kids think I'm mean or that I give a lot of homework, but really, my whole thing is about time management.
Yeah.
And I know I'll expect a lot from you, but I also expect a lot from myself. And I, plan out my days and everything I do. And I think you'll find, and what I hope to teach you is that if you study time management and plan out your days as well, you'll be very impressed with yourself and surprised at how much you can do and still have time for the things that you want to do, which on the one hand is, I think, a good lesson and aspirational, but on the other hand, they're in third grade.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was watching it and I was like, that's a very good lesson. Time management, it is true. You can actually get a lot more done than you think you can if you plan out your days. And I'm thinking this to myself as I'm lying on a couch at 1:30 a.m. With a half-finished leftover hamburger as my final meal of the day. And I'm like, yeah, time management.
Yeah, time management.
Oh, man.
What did you think of Arthur, Jino, as being the first-time watcher of this series?
So we watched Arthur on YouTube. Are we allowed to say that? I'll cut this out.
Well, no, the episodes are on YouTube.
Yeah, the episodes are on YouTube.
PBS Kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. Yeah, the first episode, literally episode 1, there was no title sequence or anything. So I was just dropped in.
Yeah.
Episode 1, Arthur drops you in and then just keeps dropping you in with no context for anything. The first episode title, where the screen gets colorful and there's a little circle and Arthur pops up and then someone says the title. For all the other episodes, it's something relevant to the episode. For the first episode of Arthur, it's just Arthur scuba diving and he goes, "Hi!" And it literally jump scared me. Because it just flashes on screen and Arthur's just in swim trunks underwater "What's up?" And I'm just "Oh, Arthur, where'd you come from?" And there's a section where Arthur will sometimes talk to the audience to explain a problem or explain his thoughts. In the first episode, he turns to the audience and then just says, "Uh-oh," and then walks away. That's an interesting way to introduce that concept, right? And also, obviously, it's a pilot. But there were just so many little weird things, animation pilot-y things that I enjoyed. But the vibe of the episode overall, I felt a very strong pang of nostalgia, not necessarily specifically for Arthur's classroom environment, because my schooling was very different than a traditional private public school system. But just the energy and the attitude and the problems. Victoria can probably relate, but you and I have glasses. And the experience of realizing that I needed glasses, just like Arthur in that first episode, that viscerally came back to me.
Yeah.
When I was watching. So it was incredibly nostalgic. There were
side note, there was a moment where Arthur takes off his glasses and it changes the perspective from clear to blurry. And I was like, are my glasses on my face?
Yeah.
There's a lot in that first episode. There's a lot of interesting, I think. I'm pretty sure it would have to be distinctly intentional, you would think, because it's animation. But little cues of representation of just people with glasses.
Yeah.
Which a very soft, concept representation of people with glasses. But there's a point where Arthur decides not to wear glasses to school one day because he's tired of being picked on. And he's walking with Buster and he's like, "Gosh, it's harder than ever to see without my glasses." And there's a moment where they leave frame and it stays on that frame for a moment longer, just a moment, and someone else walks past them and he's wearing glasses.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we stayed on that frame a little too long. That was intentional. And you see various people, both older kids who have presumably already been through the point of needing to get glasses, as well as adults just wearing glasses. They're just sort of here and there all over the place. And it's just this really subtle little indication, if you're paying attention, or maybe it's, if you're a kid, it's a little subconscious. It's oh no, it's okay. Arthur just needs to learn and figure
it out. Yeah.
Arthur and his class, they'll recognize this is okay, and then they'll move on.
Yeah. The kids are very capricious with their teasing that way.
Yeah.
They just make fun of him incessantly, and then when he's like, "I'm fine having glasses," they're like, "Haha, yeah."
Yeah.
Anyway.
But that's the way kids are. They'll just pick on you, but then if it doesn't really bother you, they'll move on and find something else.
And again, with the representation thing, Arthur starts to feel better about wearing glasses when he sees on TV
the
superhero that he loves so much, a behind-the-scenes special, and he's like, "Wilbur Rabbit wears glasses? Wow!"
Bionic Bunny.
Bionic
Bunny is basically the Superman of Arthur, of the world of Arthur, because he's this bunny that wears a cape and saves people, and then it's revealed that his actor wears glasses. I was like, oh, it's like Clark Kent.
It's a really great push for more representation in media.
But of course, Arthur, as we talked about, I think earlier, has done episode specifically about any concept in or around or orbiting like social justice or like, social responsibility.
Good for Arthur.
Yeah, good for Arthur.
They've had like a couple guests on their shows who are like actual like political activists or like actors or whatnot who talk about important issues. And then later on, they start revealing more about like other characters' backstories too. And like one that I found in particular is like Francine's family is Jewish. So they have like quite a few episodes that focus on like Jewish traditions, like Yom Kippur and stuff like that. There's an episode where Francine's family is prepping for Yom Kippur and her older sister Catherine is like, I'm fasting. And Francine is like, I can fast too. And then Catherine's like taunting her like, there's no way you can like go 24 hours without eating. It's like a great way to like show what Yom Kippur is about and like what these traditions are, but within the lens of like, basically like she just does it because she is like showing up her sister.
Yeah, that's really cool. Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Arthur's great.
There's even a scene in that episode where Arthur is like, oh, my pen pal so-and-so like does fasting for Ramadan every year. So you should email him if you have questions. And then like Francine like hits a point where she's like, I can't do it anymore. So she emails the pen pal and it's like, how do you do it? And then the friend is like, whenever it gets hard, I like distract myself by spending time with my friends. So you should go over to Arthur's and like hang out with your friends. So, but of course, Arthur's having a pizza party. It's like this whole thing. But
Wow.
A whole other thing of drama.
Yeah. It's so hard to describe the like tone of the series. It's just like a very unique feeling of being in third grade and like being worried about things almost out of proportion. But at the time, it's like, no, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's like the utopian ideal of being a third grader. Obviously, the kids have problems, and that's the whole like point of the episode. It's like they have problems and they like work through them. But like I was watching these episodes, these kids walk everywhere. They purchase
true.
things with money.
Yeah.
They have successful Instagram accounts. Like they don't seem to have
the
any.
biggest lie of all. Well, there's one lie that's maybe a little big. Well, not necessarily. We'll come to it.
They have like the life that me as a third grader wished I had. Like I wanted to be able to walk to my friend's house whenever I wanted and just like go into town and buy an ice cream.
Walk to the movies with my friends.
Yeah. Have a phone. Were those a thing? I don't know.
Well, it's like interesting, like even though like technically Arthur does not move out of the third grade, there is one episode like in season 7 or something where they graduate to 4th grade.
Oh, right.
But then Mr. Ratburn decides that he's going to continue to teach 4th grade.
Yeah.
But then I think like after that, the next episodes just go back to 3rd grade. It's like somewhat like non-linear in terms of it's not like each episode is like the very next day.
But the canon remains, right?
The canon is implied to have, especially at the last episode.
Yeah, because they keep referencing, because references I did not get, but they kept referencing like, oh, remember this? Remember when you did that?
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
These must be old episodes.
Yeah.
These kids have been in 3rd grade forever. Are they okay?
Yeah, Victoria and I were talking about like trying to figure out how many episodes there were. Okay, more than one day passes like per episode. So clearly, if you're going to fit it all into a single 3rd grade
school year,
you're going to have to start layering the events of episodes over each other to fit it all within the necessary days, which is an extremely eventful year of 3rd grade.
There's got to be multiple Christmas episodes. Like I don't even know.
Oh,
my
true,
God.
yeah.
Like the holiday episodes.
Oh, it breaks it. It breaks it
yeah,
entirely.
no, it's over.
Unless.
Parallel universes?
On parallel universe. Because here's the thing. First episode of the picture book, Arthur's nose. He has the option to get a new nose, but he chooses not to.
And then in another universe, he does choose to get a nose, and that's where the show happens.
And that's where the show happens.
No,
as well as the resurgent picture books with the redesigned Arthur.
Wow. You
But
know,
he draws
that's
the
that's
line
true, actually. After writing an entire book about, like, accepting your nose, and then they just are like, no, but we're going to redesign Arthur's nose.
We got to make him more conventionally cute.
Yeah.
We got to make him plushable. Easily plushable.
Easily plushable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, Arthur does not shy away from talking about important issues. Turning to the episode with Mr. Ratburn and the Special Someone, which was quite the controversial episode. There's even a Wikipedia page about it.
They don't even show the wedding. They just show them walking down the aisle.
They show a little bit.
They show them
like dancing at the wedding.
They don't show any of the ceremony.
That's true, yeah.
Any of the like quote unquote official parts.
And I thought they would, because there's this whole sequence where the kids are, for those of you who don't know, Mr. Ratburn is gay.
Yes.
He marries a man. And that was the controversy because, of course, it was. I thought they would show the ceremony because there's this whole sequence leading up to it where the kids still think he's going to marry this imperious woman person who I was like, is this a wedding planner?
It turns out to be Mr. Ratburn's sister.
Who is also like
who's
the
like
officiator.
who's like the officiant and like helping him plan the wedding. Wearing lots of hats.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Also played by Jane Lynch.
Yeah. Another wonderful celebrity guest appearance.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought they would show the wedding and the vows or some of it to some degree because as the kids are all going to the wedding, they all plan to do the thing where they expect, the officiant to say like, if anyone thinks these two should not be married, stand up now or forever
object.
Hold your peace.
Yeah.
And so they're like, I saw it in a movie. It can happen. Like they can't do the wedding if it happens.
Which, again, is such a thing that I thought of as a kid.
Yeah.
I was like, like every wedding has like a moment where you can object.
Yeah, the Shrek moment. So the kids like rehearse this like speech or whatever to say, Mr. Ratburn needs someone who loves him for him and who cares about him. And it's like so distinctly specific where you're like, I feel like you could take that very speech and turn it on its head and have someone say that. And it's like a eureka moment for the kids where it's like, oh, Mr. Ratburn's marrying someone else entirely. And oh, this person loves Mr. Ratburn for who he is and all this stuff. But they don't show that. They don't quite complete that circle that I expected.
I think they like tried to like hint at it by like showing the fiance before like the wedding. They go to his chocolate shop and he's like this really nice guy and he's like, look, I like have these really tasty chocolates. Like, who are you getting it for? Which, by the way, he shows up in the last episode of Arthur as like a cameo. He has a chocolate stand and he has like free samples. I think that's one case where like they kind of trust that kids will like understand the point. They spend all this time talking about this is like the person that Mr. Ratburn deserves to be with, someone who's caring and like loves him and et cetera, et cetera. And then you see who he's like actually marrying and then you get it. You're like, oh, it's the chocolate dude.
That's true.
It's like a normalization of the idea of men can marry men. And so they don't highlight it. They don't put a spotlight on it. They just make it a part of the story and the characters without making that the focus. Like the focus is on Mr. Ratburn marrying someone who will make him into like some kind of like teacher dictator. That's the conflict.
Yeah.
The fact that he's actually marrying a man is not related. It's just like bonus. I guess that's one interpretation of it, is that it's simply trying to just normalize the idea, trusting that the kids will understand, and any parents who are upset can call 1-800-PBS hotline and hold for 3 hours, and then the line disconnects.
Yeah.
Since you watched first episode and the last episode, what did you think of where the characters end up?
The first episode, again, very piloty. Not a lot of solid characterization. There was a scene where literally Buster, who I understood at that point was like Arthur's best friend, stands up for Arthur, defending him, and then the very next scene starts mocking him.
Yeah.
There's like not even like 2
I was
seconds.
like, come on, Buster.
Buster saw an opportunity and just like took it.
Yeah.
He was a snake in that first episode.
That's a very kid thing to do, though.
Yeah.
I will
It
say.
is.
Every kid has like their like flaws, which I think is interesting too.
Buster's like, oh, this will be funny.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care who it hurts. My
Buster's
best friend
just
or
out to
whatever.
like get the best burn.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, sorry, Arthur, I just really had to say it.
Another thing you can tell where it's like pilot episode, limited things that they can do with the animation where they're like, there's a moment where Buster realizes what he's done, where he like puts the 2 water glasses down, pretending to be Arthur with the glasses. And he's like, oh no. And he looks all sad. And then they cut to Arthur like walking out of the cafeteria all bummed out. But as a part of that shot, you have like kids in the shot laughing and like Buster's like shoulders in the shot. And you can see him like laughing still.
No, Buster.
Which is just like, an accident of the process. But it's just funny.
But the characterization is so good in this show, but even just watching 6 episodes, I was able to understand every character's like general vibe by the last episode. They just do such a good job of like making every kid distinct and having their own thing going on. Muffy's rich.
Yeah.
That caught me off guard when they're like, and here's Muffy's house, and it's like a massive mansion. I'm just
Muffy's
like,
like
all right.
so rich, it's ridiculous. Like she has like a limo. She has like a personal like chauffeur. I forget his name, but he like shows up frequently because he like drives her everywhere.
And of course she becomes the politician.
Yeah.
Of course she does.
Yeah.
But like it's because it's like part of her character. She's always been the like leader type.
They do frame it as like a youthful injection into a stale system thing where it's like it's about time Mayor such and such leave office. It's been forever.
It's been 253 episodes.
I really enjoyed the last episode. It really did feel like the writers and the animators were just having a fun time, like calling back to things.
Yeah.
And like referencing things that I didn't get. But I think overall, like 8 out of 10. Arthur's design at the end, I don't know about that one.
That was a little, I mean, he looks like a writer, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, let's talk about that last episode.
Yeah, Michael, as someone who grew up watching Arthur, which character's final occupation surprised you the most, I guess?
Maybe Buster's?
Oh, he becomes a teacher?
Yeah, but it made sense like once I heard it. At first I was like, a teacher, and then I was like, yeah, I can see it.
I'm sorry to side note, but is Buster a hippie? Why does he when he goes to the wedding, he's wearing like...
It's because Muffy has the app that turns you into like, that puts like a filter over you and makes you into a hippie. And then Buster sees it and is like, oh, I actually really like that look.
Oh, that's right.
And so he just chooses to like go
like
to the wedding wearing like a
Oh.
hippie outfit.
Yeah,
I didn't get that, and I was just like, is that what Buster
They've
wears?
got great running gags in these episodes.
He's not normally dressed like that, but it was a funny callback to be like, Buster sees the app because Muffy like demonstrates how the app works by taking a picture of Buster and then putting the filter on him.
Gotcha.
And then Buster is like, oh, I actually kind of like that. And then I guess when he's choosing his outfit for the wedding, he's like, I'm gonna wear this.
Okay, that
Yeah.
I missed that. Arthur got me. Arthur pulled one on me.
I'm inclined to ask you that same question in reverse. Like, what were you most surprised with? Were you surprised at all? Because they don't show every character where they end up. They do show a few.
Some of them escape their small town.
I guess so.
That was the one thing I was thinking is like, these kids all stuck around.
I was actually most surprised by Francine, who throughout the series, she's always like very sporty and like wants to be like a professional soccer player or something. But she ends up being like a businesswoman who sells shoes, which is like adjacent to her love of sports, but not quite the thing that you would see her becoming as like a third grader. The part of that was basically saying like, you could be interested in anything as a kid and do something completely different as an adult. There's like a whole sequence where they like play a game that...
A very strange game.
A very strange game that supposedly can predict your future.
I feel like that game was like... that game was like a BuzzFeed quiz.
It is
in board
100%
game
just
mode.
a BuzzFeed quiz, but like in the form of like
An
a board
electric
game.
plastic octopus squid with a grating voice.
Well, but even Muffy says like, games can't tell what your future is, only online quizzes can.
Yeah. The writers knew what they were doing.
Yeah,
The writers knew what they were doing, but also just that line, as someone who, for the longest time, was used to these characters just being like existent in the 90s.
Yeah.
Seeing
Suddenly
that
Muffy
and,
has like a cell phone.
Yeah, look at this app, and I'm like, don't stop, please. It's moving too fast. We're going too fast, please. I need a moment.
I thought this was Nostalgia Club, not now, Club. What happened to my children?
Yeah, so I think I was most surprised by Francine. I think Binky becomes like a weather reporter.
Oh yeah, like
which
a
is
news
like,
anchor.
I mean, I don't think I was surprised because I didn't like think in depth of like what Binky would be doing in the future.
Can
But
I
was
just say, Binky's pretty great.
Binky is great.
I got one Binky episode. I'm Team Binky. Binky's great. Binky's my vibe.
Binky, who is like a bulldog, he starts off being like the classic class bully. He's always like the one who picks on Arthur and like his friends most frequently. I think he is like a bit older because I guess he got like held back a grade. He's older, he's bigger, he's tougher. But throughout the series, he goes through some character development. Like, I would say all the characters, like, even when they change, they still hold on to like some of their like core characteristics. Like, even though Binky becomes like a nicer person, he still like is sometimes mean. But like, that's every kid, you know? But at some point in the series, his family adopts like a baby girl from China, and he has like a baby sister, and he's like very super excited about it. And I think they had like some episodes like going over like her culture and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool as a kid to see.
I just like his vibe. In the episode we watched, Buster and Arthur inadvertently start a feud in their school where the school splits into two different sides where they like refuse to interact with each other and like have snow fort fights and like are generally awful towards each other. And Binky walks in a day later having missed a day of school and just like, I'm just not going to get involved. I'm going to sit in the middle and establish my own team where we can just hang out and not think about it.
Is this the second part of the Mr. Rapper
This
episode?
is the second half
This
of
is
the
the
Mr.
B
Rapper.
plot.
Yeah.
So
the B story.
Binky's gone through a certain amount of character development already at that point.
I also wanted to bring up complete side note, but while we're talking about characters, Arthur actually has an even younger sister.
Oh.
So he has DW, and then he has Kate, who, again, with like the timeline thing, at some point his mom has a baby. And then even though Arthur does not like ascend grades, the baby gets older.
That's weird.
I wasn't aware of that. Okay, canon's out the window.
I thought about that the other day and I was like,
Again, multiverse.
Like,
Every
I
episode
remember-
is like they just had the baby earlier.
Yeah. I actually can't remember if this was in the books or in the series, but there's definitely like a storyline where their mom is getting ready for a new baby and like it's a story of DW basically having to get used to the idea of not being the baby anymore. And so at first, like, she's very resistant. She's like, I'm the youngest. Like, I don't want to give that up. But then she ends up accepting her younger sister. Anyways, the younger sister's name is Kate. And Kate is like a baby for pretty much the entire series. There are episodes that are just solely focused on Kate.
Huh.
Wait.
And she can talk to animals.
That's right. They have a pet dog named Pal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. She can talk to Pal.
Yeah, and it turns out she can not only talk to Pal, but she can talk to, like, squirrels and, like, toads.
Wild. Kate has a superpower.
Yeah,
Kate's like Boots.
I guess, yeah, she's like Boots. But the idea is, like, Kate, because she doesn't communicate with, like, humans, because she hasn't learned to, like, speak English or whatever, she can talk to animals. So it'll basically be like, Kate will be like having this intense conversation with Pal. Pal, we gotta like help Arthur with like this thing or whatever. And then Arthur looks over and then Kate is just going like, goo goo gaga, like, like baby talk. And then like I was reading up on the character and it turns out like as she gets a little bit older and starts like learning to communicate with other people more, she loses the ability to talk to like animals, like bit by bit. So that's wild.
That's kind of traumatic.
Yeah.
A whole like fantasy subplot within Arthur.
But like I don't know. I guess like some kids when they're little do think that they can talk to animals, and then you get older and you're like you kind of forget about it. It's just something you do as a kid. But who knows? Maybe we all could have talked to animals when we were younger.
When we were tiny little babies, they could barely form memories.
Yeah. Just like Boots and Gregor the Overlander.
Just wow.
Listen to our previous episode.
Listen to our
Nostalgia Club.
Everything's got a connection. Warrior Cats to Gregor was outsider dropped into a strange new world with competing factions.
Yeah.
And then Gregor to Arthur is fun little sister character.
Yeah.
She's magic? Question mark.
Yeah.
Vaguely magic. Speaking of animals in the Arthur universe, why
do they have a dog?
What is Arthur canonically?
Okay, so let's get back around to the final episode, right?
Because he has a...
Yeah, so this is one of those things that I think you can chalk up to, like, the same situation where it's like, so we have the sister grow older, the kids are still in 3rd grade, but they're also progressing through time, 20 years. So how does that make sense? And it's like, don't think about it. You just don't think about it.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the answer, because in the final episode, they go to the library, and Arthur, the whole episode is, as you said, Victoria, about like, sometimes you get something that you didn't want, but it's kind of, it takes you to a place that turns out it's maybe what you needed, or it works for you anyway.
Yeah.
And Arthur's whole thing, which I guess we can reveal, is...
He's a graphic artist.
Graphic novel artist.
A graphic novel artist. They ask him, they gather around, he's like, my graphic novel has been published. And they're like, read it to us. And I'm like, that's not...
See,
what are you going to describe the pictures?
That was I mentioned like the most unrealistic thing, maybe conditionally. That was when I was like, I'm not sure if I believe all of your friends and also your sister being that excited about the fact that you wrote a graphic novel.
Listen, when I tell people I make podcasts, their excitement ranges for whoa to and it's mostly So,
but if anything, I think it's very wholesome and indicative of a very supportive friend group and a much closer relationship with his sister when he's an adult.
I just think they don't know what a graphic novel is.
That's also possible. Yeah. Well, maybe it's like a picture book. You like read it and you turn it around partway through, and
I guess. I don't know. Just like the idea of like asking someone to read me their comic. And it's like,
yeah, I guess so. But I mean, how are you going to end Arthur with like, hey, congrats?
Well, I think what it's implying is that basically like the whole series of Arthur, all of these adventures are like Arthur writing it in his graphic novel. Basically like retelling like stories from his childhood.
Yeah.
Looking back nostalgically.
Anyway, so as far as aardvarks go, when Arthur's a kid and he gets like a how to draw book or something, they also like, I don't know, he sees some zoology book or whatever, and the kids are like, oh, look, an aardvark, like in the zoology book.
I saw that.
And they're like, Arthur's like, I can't believe their noses are that long. And I'm like, okay, at this point, everything's just out the window. Is Arthur an aardvark? It doesn't matter.
Is Arthur an aardvark?
I wish Arthur had looked at that and someone goes, oh, it's an aardvark. And just kind of slowly zooms in on Arthur's face. He goes, yeah.
Arthur's like,
an
aardvark.
That's that's what. And then Buster's like, come on, Arthur. And Arthur's like, okay. And then runs off. That's my ideal Arthur episode.
The little like dark vignette closes around the edges of the frame.
All the color slowly seeps out.
The sound washes away.
He's like, yeah, that's, and I'm, that's.
That was definitely like the writers were poking fun at what they know people have just been wondering this entire over 25 seasons. Just what is Arthur? They really had to like slip that last one in and be like, you thought he was an aardvark?
No one knows now.
Let's make it more difficult.
He's an ambiguous oval. He's got ears.
He's a mammal.
He definitely like looks more like a mouse.
He's the platonic ideal of a mammal.
Huh? Yeah, like
but don't they have other like mice in the series?
Probably, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, maybe like the aardvark in the picture in the drawing book is like ancient aardvark, and then now they evolved to like having like shorter noses. I don't know.
It's like the equivalent of like getting a book of like how to draw Neanderthals. And you're like, wow, look at that.
I didn't know they were so buff.
Yeah.
Do I have any more Arthur things?
The music is something else, I will say.
Is that the opening theme for every episode of Arthur?
Uh-huh.
It's reggae?
Yeah.
That's sick.
It's
a good theme.
If anyone has not listened to the Arthur theme, I'd be surprised. But if you haven't, I highly recommend you listen to it now.
When I started listening to it, I had a visceral like, oh, I've heard this before, but I don't remember it being reggae. This must be like a newer...
Like they like updated it.
An update.
No, that's been the same. They used the same intro. Well, I think they've like reanimated to
must have.
Yeah. To like make it look to match the rest of the show. Because can you imagine if it was like 90s animation?
Oh, wow. That would mess me up a little.
And the show is like crisp and like new art style.
Yeah.
But yeah, they've kept the same intro, which as I'm saying that they like have updated the intro, it also happens so like seamlessly over the years that it all like blends together in my mind. Like when I think about Arthur, I think about like the newer version, but then when I rewatch the old episodes, that also like seems like I'm just like, yeah, that's Arthur.
They're just really good at like establishing and holding a tone for like that many seasons.
For a really long time.
It's really impressive.
As well as I suppose a visual language, a shot composition. It seems like, I mean, there's obvious changes, but the way that they handle their, I don't know if the cinematography is how you would describe it.
I would describe that as cinematography. I think people who plan shots for animation would consider themselves like doing some kind of cinematography.
Yeah.
Roger Deakins did How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah. Animator friends, at me at Twitter. At PBS. At PBS. It's me.
I run the PBS
I run
Twitter.
the PBS.
I have one question for the both of you.
Yes.
Okay.
Much like Arthur did in episode 2 of Arthur, did you have an experience in school, elementary, middle school, whatever, where you were looking forward to what teacher am I going to have next year? And you got the one you thought was going to be a nightmare and they turned out not to be?
My schools were never big enough where we like had an option of like this homeroom teacher versus that. I guess until I got to like my middle school where like you had two options. I think I always got like the good one. I think the closest would be my 8th grade homeroom teacher. There were 2 8th grade homeroom teachers. One was the social studies teacher who is, I actually would describe him as the Mr. Ratburn of our school because his tests were so intense. Our social studies textbook was a good like 10 inches thick, and we would have to carry that thing around every week. I would like try to finish my social studies homework at school so I wouldn't have to bring the textbook home. That's how bad it was. And then the tests were like, I don't know, like I've never studied as hard for tests as I did in 8th grade social studies.
Wow.
Because they were very intense. And he would handwrite the tests. and then make copies of them, obviously. And there were always like 2 essay questions and like multiple choice and blah blah. Anyways, he was like the strict teacher, and then but then like the other teacher, like she was kind of strict, but she was like a little nicer, I guess. But she was the Spanish teacher. So I ended up in her classroom. I don't know. I didn't think very much of it. I wasn't like, thank goodness I'm in her class.
You were too busy reading Warrior Cats.
I was too busy reading Warrior Cats and studying for social studies tests.
Warrior Cats.
Yeah.
What about you, Jino?
I went to an unorthodox school. I went to a Montessori school. So our classes, we didn't move from teacher to teacher to have, like, it was kind of like a Ratburn situation. I had the same teacher basically from like 1st to 3rd grade. And then I had the same teacher from like 4th to 6th grade.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
That kind of deal. There was a lot of anticipation moving from 3rd to 4th grade because a lot of the 4th grade to 6th grade teachers, the upper L teachers, they were old and scary. They strict. They talk about economics. Whoa. Oh, they would get you
with economics.
With economics. Actually, the one who talked about economics was ended up being really nice.
That's good.
Well, there you go.
She would read a book. This is not related to Arthur at all. But every week, every Wednesday, she would have it's like economics hour, and she would sit down all the 4th through 6th graders, and she would read a chapter about a book about kids investing in stocks.
Wow.
And she'd be like, invest in stocks, kids. You better do it. And 5th grade Gina was like, I'm going to do it. And I did. I invested in one stock.
Well, wow. Yeah. Appreciation for our teachers.
Yeah, teachers have a tough job. They're underpaid and they're underappreciated and they don't have enough resources. And a Montessori education is meant to be for the lower class and affordable, but instead it has become an upper class social status symbol, and it is stomping on Maria Montessori's grave in the worst possible way.
Thanks for joining us on Nostalgia Club.
I can cut that out. It's fine.
Nah, leave it in.
Oh.
Die on this one.
I think that's all the time we have for talking about Arthur, even though there are 25 seasons. Honestly, if you watched Arthur as a kid, highly recommend watching the last episode. It'll be really nostalgic. You'll have a lot of memories come back to you, but definitely recommend, because I remember so distinctly coming home after school and watching Arthur, and it was very fun to revisit those memories, which the things that happen in those episodes sometimes feel like my own memories, if that makes sense. Where you remember it, but you're like, did that happen to me, or did I watch that?
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I understand that, though.
Yeah.
There's certain frames of this TV show, or shots or sequences, and I'm sure, Jino, you have them for other shows as well, where, because as a kid, you're just watching the TV screen, and so the memory is of seeing that sequence of events. And so in a way, I think you are completely right.
Yeah.
It's just a part of your memory.
And I think also, because some of the experiences are, very, close to things that you experienced as a kid.
That, I think, holds more true to me.
Yeah.
Watching Arthur episodes, I'm like, yeah, I kind of had something like that.
Yeah.
For me, my Arthur knowledge didn't really arise until, the memes started coming out. Arthur's fist, or, DW looking at the sign, this can't stop me if I can't read.
Yeah. Good stuff.
When you have a show that runs for this long, you're bound to make some good funnies.
Yeah. All right, so go watch Arthur. Get glasses if you need them.
Show your kids Arthur instead of those baby sensory videos. Give them life lessons.
Yeah.
Instead of dancing carrots. Come on.
Appreciate your nose and your teachers.
Yes.
In that order.
And we'll see you on the next episode.
This program was made possible by contributions to your podcast station and from viewers like you. Thank you.
Thank you. clubpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to Nostalgia Club. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us on Twitter @_Nostalgia Club and on Instagram @Nostalgia Club Podcast. Leave a comment, give us a rating, and subscribe. You could also send us an email with your suggestions for what we should review next at nostalgiaclubpodcast@gmail.com.
Hello, this is Casey's cell phone. I'm either in the studio or screening for spam phone calls, so leave a message.
At the tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hey, Casey, just your local spam caller here to remind you about Arthur, the children's TV show about an aardvark named Arthur and his little sister DW, and a fun cast of characters that attend a third grade class taught by their teacher, Mr. Ratburn. Now, Arthur goes through a lot of trials and tribulations during his 25 seasons and 250 episodes approximately. But did you know the show ended recently in 2022 when Arthur grows up to become a comic book artist or a graphic novelist, where he basically retells his childhood stories in the Arthur graphic novel. DW becomes a police officer because, of course, she does. Muffy the rich girl becomes a politician. The monkey becomes a businesswoman, and Buster is there also. It's a really great show. They pushed a lot of different boundaries. Well, not push boundaries, but they advocated for a lot of social justice stuff, like Mr. Ratburn being gay. That's real cool, but they do it in like a nice subtle way that doesn't like make it a big deal about it. And support your local library because you might discover the truth about your past. Anyway, goodbye.